substitute for the prelims because I can understand that these topics are very complicated. But I think I am required to give examinations instead of alternative activities. So you'll have to follow the rules. In your exercise tomorrow, I will try to give you sample problems to show you how the exams, not only in my prelims, midterms, and finals will look like, but how they will look like when you take the board exams. So I think that is a useful exercise. There is no substitute for remembering and knowing terms and concepts. Like I told you, this is a reading course, and unfortunately, whether or not I lecture on it, you have to read it. We'll start the formal session, as I said, 12:30, at 2:30. I just want to say a few things. Ang halata ko, hindi kayo nagpapakita ng sarili nyo live. So, hindi ko alam kung yan ang nakasanayan nyo. Dahil sa klase ko last semester, live kami lagi. Ito'y upang makita ko rin kung sino kayo talaga at kung kayo ba ay talaga nakikinig. Baka naman nanonood kayo ng TV o naglalaro ng games. Ano? Now, I understand you're trying to save your bandwidth. But in as much as we're only meeting once a week, I would encourage everybody to be live. Para at least makita ko kaya. Alam nyo, napakahirap mag-grade ng tao, hindi mo alam ang mukha. I'll tell you that. As somebody who's been teaching since my first job at UP, mahirap. Kung lagi kang, sa UP kasi, sa college, optional lang attendance. Alam mo, mga rebelda kami. Optional attendance, pati teacher, optional attendance niya. So, I would hold the class. I was teaching political science. Kilala ko naman mga yan. Mga underclassman ko sila eh. Kagagraduate ko lang eh. Alam ko kung saan ko sila hanapin. Nandun sila nagiinuman. They're not present in my class. But ganito kasi usapan nun sa UP eh. Huwag ka nga mag-attend. Pag nag-attend ka, kala galingan mo yung recitation mo, galingan mo yung quiz mo. So, in other words, pag hindi ko kayo nakikita sa klase, hindi ko kayo kilala bilang tao, I'll tell you talaga, totohanan to. Madaling magbagsak. Madaling magbagsak ng tao hindi ko kilala eh. Ngayon, kung nakikita ko yung mukha ni Mr. Gregorio, nakikita ko yung mukha ni Ms. Silahes, siguro naman, masakit sa loob ko kung nakikita kong gaano kayo kasipag mag-attend ng klase ko. Masama naman ang loob ko kung ibabagsak ko pa kayo. Di ba? Baka bigyan ko kayo ng maganda-gandang grade. Okay. So we start. I gave us a reading assignment. The operative provisions of Article 1157. Obligations pa rin tayo, ladies and gentlemen. Napaka-importante nito. If you do not get this straight, parang driving ito. Kung hindi nyo alam na yung may cambio, may manubela, may silindrodor sa kotse, kahit kaano kayo kagaling na mag-aral, hindi kayo makapag-drive ng mabuti sa kotse. Okay, so ganito rin yun. We're going to spend some time on the concepts of obligations and contracts, and then we will proceed as the civil code proceeds with the provisions on conditional obligations, pure obligations, etc. But we will really give some time for this para magets nyo. Okay? Importante magets nyo. Okay. So last time, binigay kong assignment sa inyo, yung operative provisions ng Article 1157, quasi-contracts, at saka acts or omissions punished by law. So if you read your readings, maintindihan nyo that obligations arising from quasi-contracts, dalawa lang naman talaga yon other than the other quasi-contracts, the extra contracts. So that's negotiorum gestio and unjust enrichment, solutio indebiti. Yung negotiorum gestio, basahin nyo na lang yan kasi I tell you, mga classmates ko nasa gobyerno na ngayon, nasa Supreme Court ngayon, I've never encountered a case involving the officious manager. Siguro sa Roman law, marami silang ganun. I've never seen a case in all of the law offices and government agencies that I've worked with. So you read it, it's very theoretical. It might come up in the exams or in the board exams. Just know it. I cannot give you a practical example. I have never seen an example of negotiorum gestio. Unjust enrichment comes up all the time. Kaya I want you to know it kasi practical ito mga kaibigan. Kahit hindi kayo pumasa sa board exams, kahit hindi kayo mag-practice ng accountancy, at kayo ay sumugod na lang sa buhay, maganda na alam nyo ano ang quasi-contracts. Kasi lalabas at lalabas yan. What is the main concept of quasi-contract? Unjust enrichment. Diba? Yung nakalamang ka eh. Manonotice nyo, walang ehemplo, walang halimbawa ng kung nakapulot kayo ng wallet at hindi nyo binalik. Diba? Yan ba ay unjust enrichment? In a way, yes. Unjust enrichment kasi wallet yan ng ibang tao. Ngunit yan ay theft. Kaya hindi yan sakop ng paragraph 3. Kasi yan ay hindi quasi-contract. Pag ikaw ay nakapulot ng wallet, may laman o wala, may identification man o wala, ikaw ay obligadong ibalik ito. Ganito ang style dyan, mga madams and monsieurs. Kung nakapulot yung wallet, first, of course, kung may ID, ibigay nyo na sa tao. Good faith, di ba? Ibigay nyo na sa tao. Sa kanya yan, hindi naman sa inyo eh. Kahit 1,000,000 pesetas ang laman yan, balik nyo sa tao. Pangalawa, kung walang ID, o may ID, hindi mo na alam sa telephone number, kung Facebook kayo. But the legal procedure is, you surrender it to the police or the city government, municipal government. Ano? At kung walang magkiklaim, they're supposed to auction it off. The same for anything that you find that is not yours. Halimbawa, makahanap ka ng Ferrari sa driveway mo, eh, huwag mong angkinin kaagad kasi mahirap yan. Ano? Baka bribery yan. Okay. Paragraph 4 is acts or commissions punished by law, which are delicts. So like I told you, I don't know if I was able to explain to this section or the other. Delicts give rise to a claim for damages. Welcome, Ms. Landicho. Okay. And the damages cover reparation, restitution, or restoration. Halimbawa, na bangga yung kotse mo, ikaw yung may-ari ng kotse, nabangga na isang tao, hindi naman niya sinasadya. Unintentional acts are also crimes under the revised penal code. Okay, so although they are unintentional, akala natin quasi-delict. Pampagulo kasi itong quasi-delict, paragraph 5. Kung tingnan niyo yung screen niyo. Unintentional acts that fall under the crime, the offense of reckless imprudence are punishable under the revised penal code and are delicts, punished as delicts. So we are going to talk about nabangga yung kotse nyo, tapos ito ay hindi naman intentional, aksidente, ngunit meron pa rin siyang liability kasi lasing yung driver o naantok yung driver. Ang responsibilidad ng driver ay pag nasa likod ka ng maneho, dapat ikaw alerto at handa para sa bawat sitwasyon sa daan. Although nakwento ko naman sa inyo, I'm sorry to say, nakasagasa ako ng aso. After driving flawlessly since I was 16 years old in Baguio City, I ran over the dog and it's a terrible feeling. Kahit aso lang yan, it's a terrible feeling. So, lalo na kung tao, di ba? So, halimbawa, ikaw ay magdadrive, kailangan alerto ka. I was alert. The dog ran into my vehicle. It was not my fault. Okay. When your car is bumped accidentally, uh, there are several incidents. There are several consequences. The driver is liable under the revised penal code for reckless driving resulting in damage to property that is tried in the Metropolitan or Municipal Trial Court, the lowest type of court. Kasi maliit lang na bagay yan. Pangalawa, he is civilly liable. Yun yung pinag-usapan natin sa paragraph 4. For damages. Never say damages when you are referring to floods, fire, war. Ukraine is not suffering from damages. It is suffering from damage. Cagayan province is not suffering from flood damages. Damages is a term only used to describe legal damages. Damage caused by nature, war, or conflagration is always singular. I'm sorry to be an English teacher today, but that's my first job at UP. I taught English in the high school. I taught poli-sci in the college. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, tingnan nyo itong Article 1157. Obligations arise from law, hanggang number 5. Alam niyo ba ang katotohanan? The easiest way to remember 1157, there's only one source of obligation. It's law. Because contracts arise from law. Di ba pinag-aralan natin yung constitutional protection to the right to contract? The right to contract, a feature of capitalism, is in our constitution. Quasi-contracts arise from law. They're described in the Civil Code. I had you read all the types of quasi-contracts. I will ask examples from you one time. Keep that in mind. This is not a reading exercise. We need to know these things. Okay? Delicts, number 4, also arise from law. They're in the revised penal code and special penal laws. When we say special penal laws, those are laws which mete out a penalty but are not in the revised penal code. Okay? So dati kasi 1936, yung revised penal code lang sinusunod nila. But since then, we've had a mushrooming of many penal laws. Alam niyo yung pinagkakainitan ngayon, yung no contact apprehension policy ng gobyerno, yung mahuli ka lang sa TVC. Palagi ko, alam niyo, kahit ako, maingat ako mag-drive. I stop at pedestrian lanes. I do not go into the yellow box. I respect the rights of other drivers. I'm sure pati ako na dyan sa no contact. Yan yung may camera sa taas. Tapos magkamali ka lang sa traffic, papadalahan ka lang na ng ticket. Ibig sabihin, babayaran mo yan. That is a penal law. Yung lagi ko nga sinasabi, yung traffic violation, it should be tried in court. Because it is a penal violation of a penal law. When you violate the traffic code of the city of Quezon City or Binangonan or whatever other municipality, that is a violation of law, which entails a penalty. What is the penalty? Matindi ang penalty rito. My friends, 5,000 pesos, 10,000 pesos. It's not small change. Okay. I ask you to read 1158. Let us study this very carefully. It says here that only those obligations which are specified in this code or in special laws are demandable. Di ba we were talking about moral, natural obligations as opposed to legal obligations. And the difference is that legal obligations are legally demandable. Ibig sabihin, pwede kang pumunta sa korte o sa isang government agency para pilitin yung isang tao na tumupad sa kanyang obligasyon. Okay? But those can only be enforced by legal action if they are specified in the law, whether it is in this code or in special laws. What are special laws? Special laws are those laws passed by the legislature other than the civil code. Okay, so ano yung mga yan? Marami yan. Meron tayong property registration decree. yan ay tumatalakay sa lupa. So may mga obligasyon dyan. Pag kayo po ay may lupa, o ang magulang nyo, kamag-anak nyo ay may lupa, kailangan alamin nyo itong batas na to kasi nandyan ang obligasyon nyo bilang landowner at nandyan rin ang obligasyon ng ibang tao na nakikipag-transaction sa inyong lupa. Okay? So hindi nila pwede sabihin, hindi, akin yung lupa mo. Wala akong pakialam kung may titulo ka. Hindi po pwede yan. Kasi nasa property registration decree na dapat respetuhin ng ibang tao ang titulo nyo. Tapos kung wala kayong titulo, meron din ibang batas dyan kung paano ang paghahawak ng lupang walang titulo. Meron din separate na batas para sa mga squatter. Yung mga talagang walang balak magpatitulo ng kanilang lupa. Kasi kung magpapatitulo kayo ng lupa, alam mo, the government gives away land. So you can occupy the land, it's called the homestead, and after a while, if you use the property properly, you can own it. You just buy it from the government. No? The government is selling the land. So, itong kwento ko sa inyo, I grew up in the gold mines. So sa labas yan ng Baguio City. But because we were, of course, studying in Baguio, my parents bought property in Baguio City itself. So we had a house in Baguio City. But it was in one of those areas na dineclare the other President Marcos, the dictator, as a town site center. So hindi namin pwedeng tituluhan. It has to be bought from the government by public auction. Diba? After a certain period. So, ang gulo kasi niyan umakit pa sa Supreme Court, maraming kagulo-gulo. Tapos when Marcos was deposed, lalo nagkagulo because nobody really knew how to implement the turnover of the properties. All of our neighbors and we were interested in getting titles to our properties, but we could not because there was no procedure. So finally, the government, I think in the 1990s, I was already a lawyer, I was able to study the new law that allowed the sale of properties in that area in Baguio City. Public auction ko yung lupa. Ngunit ang ginawa ko, tiniming ko yung public auction na malakas ang ulan para walang pupunta. So, pagkarating ko ron, kasama ko mama ko, dala namin yung pera. Maliit lang, mura lang kasi yan. Alam niyo yung pag nagbenta ang gobyerno ng ganyang klaseng lupa, yung residential, mura lang yan. Malaki yung lupa namin. Ha? So pagkarating ko, tinignan ko yung DNR officer na nag-officiate ng auction. Sinabi ko, sir, lakas ng ulan. Wala na siguro darating nito. Please declare the auction closed. Yan. Siyempre, attorney. Wala na yan. Sige. We had no bidder other than ourselves. Dapat ito lang. Okay. So those are the special laws na tinutukoy dito. Right, ito, ladies and gentlemen, tingnan niyo the next phrase. And as to what has not been foreseen by the provisions of this book. In other words, when you come across an obligation that is not specifically stated in the civil code, or in the other special civil laws, dealing with property, dealing with obligations, dealing with contracts, and it's not exactly there, you have to apply the same principles in the civil code, even if it was not specifically stated there. Now, there are cases where this has been done, but since you are not law students, we will not go through them. What I require you to know, as professionals, because we will all be professionals at one time, is to know that yung wala sa batas, you still have to follow the same principles as in the civil code. Hindi talaga eksakto sa batas. Okay? Because the civil code is already supposedly the fairest system of determining obligations. Okay. So we move to 1159. I'm sorry this is boring, but there's no other way to do this except this way. Obligations arising from contracts have the force of law. Wow! Mga kaibigan, kung kayo ay, kung si Mr. Review, halimbawa, may boyfriend, at, having a nice time together, walking in the park, and then her boyfriend says, when we both graduate, I will give you a ring. There's no obligation, but I'll just give you a ring. You may want to consider yourself engaged to me, but okay lang kung hindi. Kasi hindi natin alam ano ang sistema, anong sitwasyon natin, pag-graduate natin, but I'll give you a ring. E nag-graduate silang dalawa, Mr. Review at saka yung kanyang boyfriend. Can Mr. Review ask for that ring? Is there a contract already between them? Mr. Review?
Yes po, sir.
I saw you a while ago. Oh. Please turn on your microphone, my dear.
Yes po, sir.
May obligasyon ba siya sa'yo na bigyan ka ng sing-sing?
Meron po.
Oops, teka na. I think the problem is me. I turn off my volume because I only turn it off when I watch YouTube. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. B. Ano sagot mo?
Sir, what's the question again, sir?
Nag-promise sabihin natin may boyfriend ka, at nag-promise siya na bibigyan ka ng sing-sing pag graduate yun. Nag-graduate kayo! Hindi ka naman binigyan ng sing-sing. Pwede mo ba siyang habulin at hingan ng sing-sing kasi yun ang kanyang promise sa'yo?
Hindi po, sir. Hindi po
Bakit?
pwedeng habol. Oral promises, sir, are not equal to contracts, sir. Wala naman
Sometimes
kaming
an oral
ginagawa.
promise is a contract. There are only certain oral promises that have to be written. Diba? There are only certain contracts which have to be written. And we will study that later when it gets more complicated. Ako, tingin ko, Mr. Review, he has made a contract with you. And what is a contract, Mr. Review? It is a meeting of the minds, di ba? It is when both parties agree on something, to do something in consideration of something else. So what is the element of a contract? Two parties at least, a meeting of the minds, an agreement to do or not to do in exchange for something, di ba? So halimbawa, Miss Senidoza, I will go back. Thank you, Mr. Review. We'll get back to that example in a while, but I'll give this more clear-cut example. I have this ring. It's a very nice ring. I have no romantic interest. I'm just selling it to you. Okay? And you promised to buy it after, let's say, your first pay as a certified public accountant. First pay mo. Kasi nakapasok ko sa IBM. Ako, ang gandang trabaho. IBM is a job for life. Huh? So ako, okay lang. Di ba? I come back to you when you are already a CPA and after, alam mo kung kailan yung first payday mo kasi lagi ako nagtatanong sa mami mo, Miss Senyodosa eh. Is there a contract?
I think meron po kasi may agreement po kayo.
Agreement. And what is the
May
consideration?
Yung bibilin po yung sing-sing pagka nakuha ko na po yung first payment ko na CPA.
I gave you the ring already. Ano? But in exchange, in the future, you will pay me. That is the consideration. Ano? In the case of Mr. Revio, Miss Tabuno, yung situation ni Miss Toribio kanina, boyfriend, girlfriend, promised to give a ring. I'm telling you already, some oral contracts are valid. These are the Mahina ang kanyo? Okay. Miss Magpang.
Yes po, sir.
Yun. Is there a contract? Because here are two parties. They have an agreement. What is the consideration kaya? Is this a contract with a valid consideration?
Sir, I think po meron po siyang valid consideration kasi po nangako na po siya na kahit
Yeah,
Ano
but
po, kahit-
what's in it for Mr. Toribio's boyfriend? What is he getting in exchange? Diba usually ang contract kasi, I give, I do, or I do not do in exchange for something, di ba? That is the whole basis of the contract. Here, it is, I'm sorry to make this a bit complicated. The actual concept is later on in our readings, but just to tickle your mind a bit, Ms. Magpang, because you look like you understand the situation. What is in it for Mr. Toribio's boyfriend?
Sir, I think po wala po siyang matatanggap in exchange kasi sinabi niya na po na una pa lang na kahit kahit
Kahit hindi hindi sila mag-on, di ba?
kahit hindi po sila magkatuloyin, parang ibibigay niya pa din po pag after graduation.
But suppose Miss Magpang, si boyfriend ni Miss Toribio is just a nice guy and he just likes to be respected, di ba? Ako, really, I'm willing to agree that it's a consummated contract. Di ba? They are both agreed. And liberality, wala akong makukuha. Ngunit magmumukha akong pogi, di ba? Magmumukha akong mabait. That is a consideration. And that is why people donate. Di ba? So if I promise to donate, I have a con, by the way. Kami mga magkasama sa UP Law, we started an orphanage. We have an orphanage for girls. We have something like 16 girls, pinapa-adopt namin. Yung iba hindi na ma-adopt kasi matanda na eh. They're already 15. Alam niyo kung 15, 16, mahirap yan. My second job in government was I was in charge of intercountry adoptions. I negotiated in The Hague for the Hague Convention on Intercountry Adoption, which the Philippines adopted. So adoption was my first job. So that's why I'm involved in this agency. And you're always asking for donations. A donation, a promise to donate, is a contract. Diba? It's an enforceable obligation. But gray area yan. We will look after more concrete examples. Now, the obligation to do. Thank you, Ms. Magpang. Very good. I'm not yet grading your because I'm still trying to know you. In fact, I may instead give you special activities instead of giving you grades for recitation because it's really hard for me to keep track. Okay. Tulad dito, si Miss Tabuno, walang magandang signal. So, yun ang problema dyan.
Sir.
Okay ka na?
Apo. Sorry.
I'm glad you joined us. Tatawagin kita mamaya. Sige, teka lang.
Sure, sir. Sa another recitation po. Thank you.
Now, alam niyo itong Article 1163 to 1165 are the effects or what are expected of the obligors in a set of obligations. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have to be familiar with the terms. The obliger is the one to whom something is being done. And obligee is the one who has to do it. Okay? Later on, we will use the terms creditor and debtor. So the creditor is the obligee. He already lent something, di ba? And the debtor is the obligor because he has to pay back certain something as part of the debt. So we will be using these terms. Now, let us skip muna 1163 because I want to go over 1164, the term, the fruits of the thing. So 1164 has to do with giving something, okay, whether it is because of sale, because of donation, because of cession, because of inheritance, because of seizure. Okay, the government can seize your property under certain circumstances. Now the thing here, whenever we talk about things, they may be indeterminate or generic. What is the meaning of this term? An indeterminate thing is a thing which is specific, identifiable. Okay? My watch, not this watch, but my other watch has an inscription. Okay? So let's say this is the watch. Kasi ayaw ko magkalungkat dito ng baul. Okay? So this watch has an inscription, let's say from my wife, to Joe. Diba? It is not similar. It looks similar to other Seikos, but it is not similar because it's the only watch that is inscribed by my wife, dedicated to me. So when I tell Miss Tabuno that I will sell this watch to her for, let's say, 2,000 pesos. I really don't know if this is a 2,000 peso watch. I hope not. And then I give her another Seiko. Anong palagay mo, Miss Tabuno? Tumupad ba ako sa kontrata natin, sa usapan natin? Did we talk about an indeterminate or a generic thing?
Sir, ano po, I think hindi po tumupad sa usapan kasi nagbigay ka po ng another, parang ano po, hidden payment. Kasi di ba
Okay.
po yung
When an obligation to give involves an indeterminate thing, that thing must be given. Di ba? Ganito
Yes.
yan kasi, Miss Tabuno eh. Ito kasi, nakita mo na, alam mong maganda siya, umaandar. Hindi lang yon, may dedication pa.
Opo.
So, inisip mo, uy, magandang memento yan. So, willing ako magbayad ng ganong klaseng halaga para yan. At hindi ako bumibili ng Seiko. Di ba? Kasi kung gusto ko ng Seiko, tingin lang ako sa, bakit ako bibili kay Attorney Balaran? Bibili na lang ako sa Facebook Marketplace, di ba? So, ganun yon. Another example.
Okay.
Balik tayo sa kotse. Ang ganda ng pag-usapan ng kotse.
Sige po.
Meron akong magandang Ferrari. Ferrari, ah. Ngayon sa Pilipinas, there are probably 100 people with Ferraris. Maybe a little bit more if you include the old ones. But my Ferrari is unique because it is colored bright pink. Pink lawan ako with yellow upholstery. Hindi lang yon. Yung manubela, sa halip na yung Ferrari Raging Bull, di ba? May bull symbol ang Ferrari nandoon sa manubela sa gitna. Pinalitan ko ng picture ni Lenny.
Ay, gusto ko yan.
You don't have to agree with my political views. It
Yeah.
does not give you any advantage. Okay. Ibebenta ko yun kay thank you, Mr. Bono. I'm glad you joined us. Dexter Lee lang. Kaso, di nag-agree kami. Dexter, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Agree tayo. May pera ka eh. Hindi ka lang nakapasa ng board exams. Nakapasok ka sa online gambling. Ang sweldo mo bawat buwan, 1.5 million. Kasi ang lakas ng online gambling eh. 1.5 million. Alam mo bakit? Atong Ang will pay you more if you keep his account straight. Kasi he earns 1.5 billion a day from yung online sabong. So baliwala sa yun. Big time ka eh. Bili ka ng Ferrari. Bili mo yung Ferrari ko. Eh, ikaw, type mo rin. Ano, siguro, balak mong palitan yung pinta. Okay, bahala ka, bibilin mo naman. Kaso, di nag-usap tayo, attorney, gusto ko yung kotse mo. Meron akong pera. Bilhin ko yan for 20 million, which is the going price for Ferraris. Ako nang bahala sa LTO at saka yung excise tax. Eh, may tax yun. Bigay mo lang yan sa akin. You know why Dexter is willing to do that? Kasi mahirap paghanap ng Ferrari ngayon. Mag-import ka, ang daming kalokohan, baka i-seize pa ng customs. Buti na yung nakita mo na nandito na, landed in the Philippines, alam mo na sa garahe, bilhin mo na. Eh kaso ang nangyari, nag-usap kami ni Dexter, bukas dadaling ko. Ngayong hapon, nabangga ako. Kaso gusto ko pa rin yung pera, sayang naman yung 20 million. Pero pa ako isa pang Ferrari. Hold-upper kasi ako, kaya marami akong pera. Dexter, bigyan ko sa isang Ferrari. Payag ka. In other words, will you accept this other Ferrari if you had already accepted the other car? Halimbawa, ayaw mong tanggapin. Can you sue me?
Sir, ano po ulit yun, sir?
Ha?
Sir, again po.
Oh, ayaw mong palitan, ayaw mo ng ibang kotse. Gusto mo talaga yung pinklawan na Ferrari.
Opo.
Yeah, yun ang gusto mo eh. Talaga yun ang gusto mo kasi may plano ka ron. Can you sue me? Wala
Sir,
na eh. Nabangga, sira na eh.
Sir, I think yes.
Yes.
Kasi po,
Kaso sira na eh. Di ba, the obligation to give is the obligation to give an indeterminate but definite thing. In this case, the pink Ferrari with Lenny's face on the steering wheel. I cannot give it anymore. What can you do to carry out this contract, to finish this contract, para matapos ng usapan?
Sir, gusto ko rin po gawin niya yung Ferrari na may mukha rin po nila ni ganun.
Ha? What can you make me do? In other words, halimbawa, nasa kwan na tayo, di ba? Nasa fiskalya na tayo, nasa korte tayo. What can you force me to do? Eh, sira na yung pink na Ferrari. Wala na, wasak.
Sir, pagbayaran po kita ng damages na
Bayaran ko na lang, di ba? Kasi, I offer you something which you are willing to accept, di ba? But not siguro at the same price. Ngayon, dahil ako may utang sa iyo, bibilin mo yung isang Ferrari ko, 10 million. Mautak ito si Mr. Lilang. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lilang. So, a generic thing means that the obligor can give anything which is similar from the same class of goods, di ba? So, halimbawa sa Lazada, nag-order kayo ng electric fan. May mga usong electric fan, may small electric fan. Mga maliliit na ganito, di ba? Nabibili to sa, I didn't buy this. This is my daughter who gave it me for work. She went to Europe. Nabibili to sa Lazada. Siguro 250. Mahal na siguro yun. USB eh. USB. May baterya siya. Baterya, 250 pesos real lang. But rechargeable siya. And Lazada does not deliver it kasi nagka-problema sa factory sa China. Lazada can always offer something else, di ba? In fact, it can offer it a different color. Sabihin nila, Miss Mangulabnan, wala na yung gray. Pwede ba tanggapin mo na lang itong green? Di ba? Ganon. Di ba yun ang nangyayari sa Lazada? Have you tried buying something from Lazada, Miss Mangulabnan?
Yes po, sir.
O, di ba? Minsan nagkakaproblema talaga eh. But they can always replace what you buy with another thing from the same class.
Opo.
That is what's called a generic thing. Diba? But if you bought, halimbawa, Miss Mangulabnan, bumili ka ng, pag ngayon, diba? URS binangonan celebrations, diba? So, bumili ka ng, alam mo yung plaque, ano, commemoration plaque of URS Binangonan on its 24th foundation year, di ba? Binili mo yan, tapos sinabi mo, paki-inscribe doon pangalan ko. Di ba?
Opo.
And they sent it to you, ibang pangalan nakalagay. Pangalan ni Miss Manintin. How can you enforce this contract against Lazada for sending you the wrong thing? Yung plaque, dapat nakalagay yung pangalan mo kasi proud ka. It's foundation anniversary. Binigay nila pangalan ng ibang tao. How can you enforce it, Miss Labnan?
Pwede ko po siyang ipa-refund.
Palitan. Because it is not a specific thing naman di ba?
Opo, hindi po kasi yun yung
Because
order ko.
although it has your name, it can be replaced with another with your name. Hindi yan tulad ng example ko, na unique talaga yung Ferrari na pink, di ba? Unique yan. Kahit saan ka pumunta, unique yung pink na Ferrari. So, when you want to buy a pink Ferrari, that's all you want to buy. This specific Ferrari, alam niyo kasi yung kotse, mahirap bumili ng iba, lalo na kung used. Kasi hindi mo alam kung may sakit yan eh. So, ang style usually yan, Miss Mangulabnan, I'm sure I hope you'll have a chance to experience this or to witness this. Magdadala ka ng mekaniko, tapos titignan niya sa sasakyan, kung mukhang okay, tapos sabihin niya, okay, yan, attorney, bilhin niyo na. Di ba? Maganda siya, walang masyadong problems may konting problema dito, madaling ayusin. 200 pesos lang yan. Bilhin niyo na, okay na yung presyo niyo. Usually ganun yan. So, pag sinabi, halimbawa, pumunta ka sa used car dealer, at napili mo na yan, nakakita ka na ng Vios, no? One of the most popular cars now. Mura lang yan. Nakakita ka na ng Vios, tingnan na ng mekaniko mo, sabi niya, okay yan. That becomes now not generic, although there are many Vioses in the Philippines and many Vioses in the entire world. But because you examined it, and because that is the one you want, it has now become a specific, definite, indeterminate thing. Okay? So that is what is now part of the obligation of the used car dealer to give to you. It is now specific. It is not generic. So ganun uli yung sitwasyon. Kung wala na yung kotse niya kasi naibenta niya sa iba o nasira o nagkaroon ng flash flood, the dealer cannot offer another technically the dealer cannot offer another Vios. Although definitely he will. Okay, mag-uusap na lang kayo uli. But in terms of the original obligation, the obligation to give a specific thing means giving the specific thing or paying damages. But this is when enforcing the law and being commonsensical are two different things. Okay? What is the commonsensical solution to this problem, Miss Manintin? Miss Mangulabnan. I'm sorry to mispronounce your names. I cannot read too well even if it's in my large monitor.
Can you please repeat the question?
What yung legal thing to do is to sue or to collect damages, di ba?
Okay.
Just like we give an example a while ago with the car, the pink car. What is the common sense solution to this problem, Ms. Mangulabnan? Halimbawa, nasira yung Vios na gusto mo.
If sa akin po, kung hindi po nila, i-refund po, babayaran nila ako. Or pwede pong maghanap na lang po ako ng ibang design nung car na tinatignan ko. Siguro naman po may ibang available.
The most commonsensical thing is to get another thing. And this is what we call, in contract law, novation. Wherein you extinguish the prior contract which could not be carried out because the thing had been destroyed and replace it with another obligation to give another thing. Diba? Hindi ka siguro mabibigyan ng damages because wala namang nawala sa iyo except the fact that you lost your choice. Diba? What they can probably offer is another article or the cost of your day for wasting your time going there with your mechanic, di ba? Eh, magkano lang naman yan? Ano? So, ganun yan, ano? The law will impose damages, but the law will be reasonable about it. Since wala naman nawala sa'yo, like wala naman nawala kanina nung binenta ko yung, wala pa naman siyang binabayaran, eh, di ba? Kung may binayad siya, magbabayad akong danyos plus interest. Di ba? Kasi nabuisit ako. So this is what 1164 simply means. So let's go back to 1163. This is one of the most important terms in contract law. The proper diligence, a good father of the family, bonus pater familias in Latin. The standard of diligence, the standard of care is a standard we get from the Roman law. And it is very commonsensical. It is very commonsensical. Ano ang tatay, Sonny Saranilla? I'm sorry, I have to presume that you have a father because there are, of course, children of single mothers, di ba? So you have a father, Miss Saranilla.
Yes po.
Ano ang good father para sa iyo? Not necessarily don't say anything specific about your father para hindi naman tayo personalan dito. But yung sa pagtingin mo lang sa tatay mo, ano sa tingin mo ang mabuting ama? Ito ang ibig sabihin nito eh. Mabuting ama.
Siguro po kapag hindi pa specific. Pag po, kaya po niyang protektahan yung buong pamilya niya. Kasi po,
Pamilya
as
niya.
a father, opo.
Tapos, sa mga kasangkapan nyo, ari-arian nyo, ano ang ibig sabihin ng good father sa mga ari-arian nyong pamilya?
Sir, paano pong ari-arian yung...
Things, your
May-
house, your car, your TV, your computer, di
Okay.
ba?
Kapag yung pag kunwari po, there's something na parang, kunwari po, example po, TV, kaya niya pong i-repair po yun as a father.
Mahirap mag-repair ng TV ngayon, Iha, unless you have one of those old TVs. Ano yung LCD TV, hindi mo maayos yan. I assure you. Ditambak ako nga LCD TV dyan. Ayaw ko. For the life of me, would not know how to fix them. But I know what you mean. Maasikaso si tatay, di ba? Marunong siyang mag-asikaso, mag-alaga ng kanyang mga ari-arian para ito ay wastong magamit ng pamilya. Di ba? Ganun, hindi ba ganun ang tatay? Ang tatay mo, halimbawa, halimbawa, sumasakay sa jeep, at kaskasero yung ibang tao, kaskasero yung driver ng jeep. Ano ang ginagawa ng tamang ama? Kasama kayo, buong pamilya, nakasakay kayo sa jeep. Loko-lokong driver pag mag-drive para siyang nasa Formula 1 na karera. Ano ang ginagawa ng tamang ama?
Siyempre po una, pagsasabihan niya po yung driver. And then po next, if may sira po yung sasakyan, pwede niya pong tulungan yung driver na mag-ayos po nun.
Hindi lang yun. Kung ako yun, sasabihin ko, bababa na lang kami. Baka maubusan pa ako ng pamilya. So a good father of a family is a caring father. Diba?
Yes po.
When he is given an obligation to take care of Miss Saranilla's family, of their things, siya ay maasikaso. Diba? He will take care of his family to the utmost of his ability. Diba, Miss Saranilla? Yan ang
Yes,
tamang ama. Ito ang ating iugnay sa ating 1163. The proper diligence of a good father of the family is yung pinag-usapan nating tamang ama. How does this apply? Pinag-aralan nyo na yung quasi-contracts, di ba? Nagkasunog yung kapitbahay niyo, Miss Saranilia. Huwag ka pa mawala. Nagkasunog yung kapitbahay niyo. So, siyempre, yung kapitbahay niyo, mga tao sa barangay, nagtutulungan, iniwan sa inyo yung kanilang refrigerator. Ano yung refrigerator? Hindi mo pwedeng ihigayan, di ba? Kasi yung Freon, yung mangyari sa Freon. Ewan ko, lagi ako, I had a refrigerator in my old office, in all of my offices. And I used to transfer, whenever I transfer, I'd move the refrigerator. It's just a small refrigerator, but hindi mo talaga maitayo unless nasa open truck. Kasi kaso, ang sinasabi naman sa akin ng mga nagbubuhat, sir, kung ihiga nyo to, masisira yung ref. So, iniwan yung ref sa tatay mo. Sa Ranilla.
Yes po.
At ito ay dahil wala nang mapaglagyan hindi mo pwedeng, di ba? Kataon naman na wala mapaglagyan. Linagay nyo na lang sa garahe, may nakasampay. So hiniga niya. Yan bang pagpalagay niya ng higa sa refrigerator na galing sa inyong kapitbahay na biglang nasunugan? Ito ba ay kilos ng isang tamang ama? Did he exercise the proper diligence of a good family, of the good father of a family? So there's no definite answer here. These are just questions to let us test the principle that's being spoken of here. Because it's an important principle. Ms. Ranilla.
I think po,
Palagay mo, tama ba yung ginawa niya? Inigaan niya yung refrigerator? Wala rin siya mapaglagyan biglang sunog
kung wala na pong choice, siguro po tama na rin po yun.
Yes, I think so. Because hindi naman ibig sabihin nakahiga yun lagi. Pero may tayo later on pag medyo maayos-ayos na, di ba? So, ang point ni Ms. Ranilla, and which I'd like the class to realize, is what is proper diligence of a good father of a family really depends on the act or the situation being studied. Ano? And so, it depends on the level of skill or understanding of the person or the relative position of the parties. I'll give you an example. This is the contract of deposit. I taught kasi credit transactions last sem. So mayroon pa akong ready exams. Thank you, Ms. Ranilla. Yung pag nag-iwan ka ng kotse sa motel, huwag kayo pupunta sa motel ng o sa hotel, they are obliged to keep your vehicle in good order. And the only exception is due to fortuitous event. So halimbawa, nahulugan sila ng buong planeta or asteroid, responsibilidad ng hotel o motel yung sasakyan nyo habang nandoon. Basta assuming na wala kayong kasalanan, baka naman iniwan nyo sigarilyo, iniwan nyo yung electric device, naka-charge yung cellphone sa sasakyan, siyempre masusunog yan. Hindi na nila kasalanan yan. So in other words, kung walang ibang situation, at halimbawa, na nabangga na ibang tao, ng ibang pumupunta sa hotel, o sa motel, yung sasakyan mo, they are obliged to repay you or to make good the damage. Now, why is this so? Because the relationship between the hotel owner and the hotel guest is very different. Di ba? Huwag na natin sabihin mayaman yung hotel guest. Di ba? The relationship is, ako yung hotel. Ako yung hotel. Ikaw yung pupunta sa akin. Ako yung kikita sa'yo. May kita ako sa'yo pag dadala ko sa hotel. Sa parking lang, may kita na ako. Kung may bayad yung parking. Sa pagkain mo sa hotel, pag stay mo sa hotel, pag dalaw mo, kahit bisita ka lang sa hotel, may kita ako dyan kasi yung nagpapa-birthday party sa hotel ko, kumita ako dyan. Siyempre, yung mga guest nyo, welcome. Kasi kung hindi pupunta yung guest niya, hindi siya magpapaparty. Di ba? So you see, the standard is very strict sa hotel. Imagine na bangga ibang tao sila mananagot. Kasi hindi mo na matitrace yung tao. Sino ba yung tao nga? Okay. So the reason I give this example is to show you that the standard, although we call it the proper diligence of a good father of the family, as a standard of care, a universal standard of care, it is not fixed and it depends on the circumstances. Diba? Tulad ng binigay ko example, nakikiusap lang naman yung kapitbahay, iniwan yung refrigerator dahil para lang may salba, kung medyo nagkaroon ng konting defect dahil pag-aalaga ng kapitbahay, forgivable na yon because he did try to save your property from fire. Kung sunog yung refrigerator mo, wala ka na pag-uusapan dito. Di ba? Ngayon, kung konting problema sa freon, di ba? Sabihin mo na sa kapitbahay mo, hati tayo sa mga bayad sa freon. Ganon. Okay. By the way, I'm sorry, I'm just lecturing, other than letting you recite. If you have any questions, rather than put it as messages here, please put it in our messenger group. Just identify yourself in your section. Ngayon ganito ang usapan dyan, para hindi naman mapuno yung ating messenger group. Pag may natanong na, tingnan nyo muna yung trend. Kung tayo dito, huwag tayo tulad sa Facebook na banat ng banat. Ha? Let us do this professionally. You all have to train to be professionals. You and I will be professionals in a certain time. You and I will have to deal with each other professionally. So let's be professional. You read through the questions muna. If your question has already been asked, then don't ask it. But if you think that the question needs a certain, you have a certain angle to the question, please do so. I will try to answer all of your questions, or at least the questions that are in common. I think that are important, related to the topics that we tackle, especially those that I don't discuss. Because I will not discuss all of this. This is a reading class. You have to read some of them. Okay? So yung tulad ng quasi-contracts, basahin nyo yan. Pangalawa, is there anybody having difficulty accessing De Leon obligations and contracts? Because henceforth, we will be using De Leon. You will be using De Leon. I don't use De Leon, but I do use De Leon to see if he has an explanation. If he has an explanation, hindi ko na i-explain unless it's very important, katulad itong good father of a family. If De Leon does a good job of explaining it, I will not explain it anymore. But you may have questions and you may ask there. Sabihin nyo, sir, sa page ganito ni De Leon, may sinabi siyang ganito, pakipaliwanag ko nga kasi hindi kami masyado klaro. Okay? So 1165 are the remedies for the failure to deliver a determinate thing. If it is indeterminate, I'm sorry I used the term indeterminate a while ago to describe the Ferrari. It is determinate. An indeterminate or generic thing can be substituted, and other than that, he may also ask that the obligation be complied with at the expense of the debtor, which is the example I gave with the watch. If you or the plaque, if you're just after a plaque and you want it inscribed, then Lazada can just provide another plaque at their cost. Hindi ka na, of course, you still pay for it because it's still the same plaque. But siguro hindi ka na nila i-charge sa delivery fee or something like that. Ngayon, ito yung mahirap, and we will tackle this later on. If the obliger, the person who has to give, delays, we will talk about delay class because it is a subject unto itself later on. Okay, but remember this. If the obliger, the giver, delays, or has promised to deliver the same thing to 2 or more persons, he shall be liable for fortuitous event. In other words, when you promise the same thing to 2 people, para ka nang loloko eh. Diba? Unless they are alternative obligations. So, if something happens to that thing, you do not have the protection of liability, freedom from liability because of fortuitous events. You're taking a risk, in other words. The simple explanation is this, is when you are giving the same thing to 2 people who do not have the same interest, you're taking a chance that you can deliver to both of them. Ano? Without trouble. However, if you promise, when we're saying the same thing, we're talking about a determinate thing, ano? Ganito kasi yan eh. You can promise to give, let's say, a red's Vios to 2 people, hoping that you can give one to Mr. A and then be able to, kasi car dealer ka, magkakaroon ka ng red Vios ulit, bibigay mo kay Mr. B. It's very hard to pick car colors. If you notice, walang kotse talaga na golden color, di ba? Walang kotse. The car companies do not provide cars in all of the colors. So we will treat a car of a certain color as determinate and a certain brand as determinate, because it's very hard to supply a car of a certain make and model in all colors. So when I go to a car dealer and I say, I like that Land Cruiser, but I like it in its present color, green. Mahirap yung green. Ilan lang ang green. So we treat that as a determinate thing. And if he promises the same green thing to my brother, he better be sure that he can comply with that. Because if he doesn't and I lose, and he loses the green thing, through fortuitous event, he's still liable. In other words, sabi ko, saan yung green na Land Cruiser? Eh sir, natamaan ng kidlat nung pinark namin sa labas para hugasan. Eh, bigyan mo ako ng green uli. O hindi, bayad ka sa akin ng damages, moral damage. Kasi naabala mo ako. So, ang Land Cruiser is, I think, mga 8 million. Eh, bigyan mo ako kahit 100,000 pampalubag-lubag. Ay, mahirap maghanap ng green na Land Cruiser. Pagganaan. So, 1167 is also self-explanatory. The obligation to do can be done at your expense if you are the obliger. And this deals with generic things. Because when the person is obliged to there are certain things that can only be done to certain persons. For example, my daughter's calling from Europe. Okay, let's make it simple muna. Let's go to the provision itself. When you're obliged to give a white Vios, which a white Vios is generic, because all car manufacturers manufacture cars in white. Okay, so assuming that you did not pick a specific model, na sabi mo kasi na-check na ito ng kwan mo, when you fail to do it, then the car dealer is obliged to look for another car that is white. Halimbawa, nag-down payment ka na. Bagong Vios, nabili mo ng 150,000 used, 50,000 kilometers lang sa odometer. So okay na yun sa'yo. Eh, nasira yun, nasunog habang linabas sa parking lot para i-car wash. The car dealer is obliged to come up with another Vios of the same type, more or less, 50,000 kilometers on the odometer, white red. Tsaka yung ganong kaganda, the same quality, Ayun, ba, wala na siya. Sabi, boss, wala na, tingnan mo yung aking dealership. Wala na akong Vios. Gusto mo, bigyan na lang kita ng galang. Bigyan kita ng Mazda. Hindi pwede. So, you will have to look for, nag-down payment ka na eh. Down payment ka na ng 50,000. So, you will have to look for another white Vios. Maghanap siya sa mga kasama niyang car dealers. Likewise, kung ang bigay niya sa'yo, and this is what is the last part of 1167, ang binigay niya sa'yo ay pangit. Nasira nga yung puting Vios. Nakahanap siya isang Vios. Kaso, yung upholstery, mabaho. Ewan ko ba anong ginawa nung dating may-ari dyan? Ginawa niya bang CR yan? Araw-araw ba siya nagdadala ng baboy sa loob ng sasakyan niya? Mabaho. Tapos, yung wiper, hindi gumagana. Tapos, yung rear view mirror, halos matatanggal na. It has to be the same quality. But itong one is to do eh. So when a person is obliged to do it, pinaayos mo yung kotse mo. Ganun yung kotse mo, sira yung, mabaho yung upholstery, so pinapalit mo yung upholstery. Sira yung rear view mirror, pinaayos mo yung rear view mirror. In fact, nagpabili ka ng bago. Bumalik yung repairman sa'yo, hindi naman ayon sa gusto mo. Ano? You have the right to demand that it be done according to your wish. Kung yun ang pinag-usapan niya at sinabi niya, kaya niya. Sabihin mo sa repairman, sabi mo, kaya mong gawin ito na almost brand new, walang amoy. Mabaho pa rin siya, hindi mo yata tinanggal yun sa loob, hindi mo hinugasan yung katawan kung saan nakalagay yung upuan, kaya may konting amoy pa rin. Tapos, yung mirror, sa halip na binila mo ng brand new, binila mo ng second hand. It may be decreed. In other words, decree is pag pinag-usapan niyang korte. So the court can force the other person to undo what has been poorly done and to do it properly. Ang suma total itong apat na provisions na to is the contract has to be carried out in good faith in accordance with its terms. Because the contract is the law between the parties. So yun ang importanteng maalala nyo. Later on kasi, nakalimutan ko itong isa, 1168. Later on kasi we will be going through problems. Problem solving. So you're given a set of facts, assuming that these facts are true and are the only facts. You may make assumptions, but be careful when you make assumptions, but just stick to the given facts. You're given a set of questions. Or you're given one question and you give an answer. The answer, because I'm the one asking the question, has only one answer. So there is no debating about it. And when I ask these questions, usually they are from decided cases of the Supreme Court, or they are very obvious from the provisions of the law. Diba? So halimbawa, ang ating Article 1168, it's the same as 1167. You must remember kasi class, an obligation is to give, to do, or not to do. Mr. Olabre, magbigay ka na nga ng obligasyon na bawal kumilos. What is an obligation that forbids an obliger from doing something?
Bawal po
isip na example, Mr. Olabre?
Bawal po ba? Sir?
Ano yung magandang example? Anong example ng bawal gawin ng isang tao na kontrata? Nakapunta ka na ba sa mall, Mr. Olabre? Meron doon parking, di ba?
Opo.
May parking doon, tapos nakalagay doon sa parking slot. Yung malapit sa pintuan ng mall, sa parking level, usually, yan, naka-reserve sa PWD, di ba?
Opo.
At saka sa senior citizen. Mr. Olabre, kapapasa mo ng CPA board. May trabaho ka. Ang trabaho mo bilang field accountant ka kasi ng construction company Inisyuhan ka ng kotse. Meron kang jeepney. Alam mo yung jeepney? Ang cute ng jeepney. Lahat ng kaibigan kong abogado at abogada gusto yung jeepney ng cute-cute niya. So meron ka noon, Mr. Alabre. Wala ka, parking. Wala kang mahanap na parking sa buong mall. Yun lang ang nakita mong libreng parking sa PWD. Nag-park ka doon. Ano mangyari? Lumabas ka, wala ka namang kapansanan. Wala ka namang sana kapansanan, Mr. Olabre, di ba? Mukha kang gwapo eh. Oh, lumabas ka na, lakas ng katawan mo. Anong gagawin ng guard sa'yo?
Pupunayin po. Sisitayin.
Nagagalitan ka, tapos kung hindi ka naabutan ng gwardya, ano ang karapatan ng guard? Nakalagay yan sa parking ticket. The parking ticket is a contract. The parking ticket is a contract between SM and Mr. Olabre. Nakalagay doon, if you park in an unauthorized way, halimbawa, kumuha ka ng 2 lanes, may mga tanga talaga mag-park sa 2 parking lanes. Ano? Nakakainis. O hindi magpa-park, lapit-lapit sa boundary ng lane niya. Hindi ka maniobra, di ba? Tanga nagpa-park. What is written in that? Unauthorized parking, they will tow your car, Mr. Olabre. They will tow it. Anong obligasyon mo doon? Palagay mo? Siyempre, gusto mo makuha balik yung jeepney mo kasi napaka-cute. Tsaka may trabaho, kailangan mo yun. Anong mangyayari sa'yo para makuha mo balik yung kotse mo?
Siguro, sir, pupuntahan ko po sa na, di ba, ito, kukunin siya ng kukuha ng kotse.
O, kailangan kausapin mo yung parking management, ano? Tanungin mo, paano ko makukuha yung kotse ko? Magbayad na lang ako ng penalty.
Penalty.
Yun yung pinag-uusapan natin dito, Mr. Olabre. When the obligation consists in not doing, and the obliger has done what is forbidden him, it shall be undone. What was undone, Mr. Olabre, in your case? In your case, what was undone? Ano yung undone na sinasabi dito sa 1168?
Ang andan ko po yung di ko po pag-park dun po sa tamang
Oo, yung park mo, it will be unparked. Your car will be towed. Hopefully they tow it properly because an automatic vehicle, madaling masira pag tinotow. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. And I'll take it up now. But I want you to read more about it in De Leon. We are talking about mora, which is Latin for delay. So, obligers who commit fraud, syempre are liable, di ba? Fraud is nanloloko ka. Negligence, alam natin yung negligence, di ba? Delay is an entirely different concept. The concept of mora, delay occurs between the obliger. In the case of the obliger may incur delay. In the case of the obligee may also incur delay. And there is a situation where both obliger and obligee incur delay. The simplest example, the easiest to remember, students, is meron akong utang kay Miss Sebastian. Binabayaran ko yan tuwing buwan. Ano? Si Miss Sebastian kasi, meron siyang personal loan business. So, nagbabayad ako dyan with a very reasonable interest naman. Okay lang naman yung interest rate na charge ni Miss Sebastian. Nagbabayad ako dyan tuwing, ano bang date ngayon?
27 po.
28 ng buwan. Ano? 28 ng buwan. Usapan yan. Kasi kailangan rin ni Miss Sebastian yung bayad ko kasi syempre yung perang yan ang ginagamit niya para sa makatulong sa pamilya niya. Working student si Miss Sebastian, kaso ang business niya paghihiram ng pera. suppose na late ako. That is a delay on the part of the obliger. Ako ang obliger, ako ang creditor. Ay, ako ang debtor. Ako ang debtor. So I have to pay. I'm the obliger, I have to pay back the debt. How does Miss Sebastian, are you around?
Yes po.
Ikaw yung obligee, ikaw yung tatanggap ng obligasyon na magbayad, di ba? Kasi 28 ng buwan, babayaran kita dapat ng part ng utang ko sa iyo plus interest, di ba? Paano ka magkakaroon ng delay dito? Bakit pinag-usapan ko obligation on the part of the creditor? Paano nagkakaroon ng delay ang creditor?
Since
Ito sa
po,
example.
by 28 dapat mababayaran niyo na po ako. Kapag po nagka-delay po kayo sa pagbayad, madedelay din po yung sustento ko sa pamilya ko, ganun.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that we are talking about delay within 1170, ano? And this is the delay. I tell you, there are three types. The delay incurred by the obliger. The obliger in this case is me. So, klaro na yun, di ba? Hindi ako nakabayad by the 28th. What is an example of a delay caused by the obligee? The creditor in this case, ikaw. Paano ka magkakaroon ng delay dito? Na may exempt ako sa pagbayad.
Let's say po, nag-out of town po ako, so wala ka pong way to contact.
Oo. 28, nandun ako. Naghintay ako buong hapon doon sa bahay niyo. Naulanan pa ako, tapos galit na galit pa yung aso niyo sa akin. Wala naman tumanggap ng pera. Anong gagawin ko ngayon? Yan, akin na yan. Actually, the more reasonable, don't go to court. I will not go to court and sue you. Don't go to court and sue me for the payment. The more reasonable one is, bawasan mo na lang yung interest next time around, di ba? Bawasan mo lang yung babayaran ko. But that is still delay. Ano? And delay renders you, if you are the debtor, the creditor, you are the one who's supposed to be paid. Ang gagawin mo lang, tatanggapin mo yung pera sa akin. Nag-delay ka pa, you'll be liable for damages. So, the damages here, hindi naman siguro libre na ako kasi willing naman ako magbayad. Siguro bigyan mo lang konting di ba? Konting konsiderasyon. Di ba? O hindi, pakainin mo na lang ako sa Jollibee. Happy na ako. Mabait ka naman, Miss Sebastian, di ba? Okay. I need a little time also to give time for the other class. Yeah. I did give this 1164 to 1167. 68. Okay, so the reason I'm emphasizing these things is when you are faced with real-world problems involving obligations, you have to be able first to determine if it is an obligation which is covered by the civil code, it is an obligation covered by other civil laws, or it is just a natural or a moral obligation. Second, you must be able to determine if the source of the obligation, that is why we have 1153. Once you determine the source of obligation, now you start imposing the rules in each. Diba? So you look at 1153. (1156) pala, 1157, you start applying what are the rules if you have obligations from law, contracts, quasi-contracts, etc. I will not give theoretical problems to you for which there is debate even within the legal community. In other words, I will not give you gray area questions from decided cases of the Supreme Court. So I will give you examples either from real life or from examples similar to cases which have been decided by the Supreme Court or actual Supreme Court cases, so that there is only one answer. And generally, the Supreme Court is very correct in applying civil law. Yes. The lawyers, the justices are very well versed in civil law. So, except for a few things which are gray area and which I will never show to you, because if you encounter those gray areas, please do not bother your minds with it. Refer it to your legal counsel. Refer it to a lawyer. I will only refer to you clear-cut examples from which you can apply a solution based on what we have read and studied in class. Now, finally, and I'd like to address this to our class president as well as to the entire class. Can you please consider having at least 1 or 2 Saturdays na joint classes? So I know it's impossible to hold classes the entire afternoon. I'm sure you will be tired, you know. But the thing is kasi, I've been looking at the curriculum. I'm using a different book, but even if I look at, even if I try to simplify it, there are really so many issues and so many topics which we have to cover. So can you please decide as 2 sections? I will mention it also to the other section. So at least 1 Saturday, 1 siguro 2 hours, 1 hour, 1 hour. 1 hour, then we'll have a break of about 15 minutes, and then another hour. So instead of 1.5 hours, sumobra kayo ng 30. But babawasan ko naman yung Sunday. The thing is kasi, I'll tell you frankly, nasasayangan ako sa Sunday because alam nyo, sa law school, ang professor pwede na magbigay ng readings, wala na siyang pakialam. Kasi kung alam niyo kung masipag ka, basahin mo yung textbook sa law, maintindihan mo yan. Ngunit, ibig sabihin talagang super magaling ka. So really, there are certain things that have to be explained by a professor. But technically, you can read everything in a law book, but the law book is very thick and very difficult, full of cases. So it's impossible for you to do that. So although nasasayangan ako sa linggo because I know that it will be difficult for you to understand the readings. So if you notice, what readings I give are those that are more or less simpler compared to the others. So I will also give you your reading assignment for tomorrow. And it will be on topics which I will not take up anymore in such detail. Kasi ang sa akin tingin, simple na sila. So pwede na kayo, basahin nyo lang yung De Leon. Or basahin nyo yung Civil Code. Yung mga kailangan ng example, o kailangan ng paliwanag dahil wala naman sa De Leon, wala naman sa libro, wala naman sa Civil Code, doon ako papasok. So mag-usap kayo ng kabilang klase if you can do this so that at least we can move a little bit faster.
Sir,
And I will reduce, yes.
actually po sa other subjects po, bago po ikaw, magkasama na po talaga kaming 2 sections.
Kaya nga hindi ko alam bakit meron akong Sunday class eh.
Yun nga po, sir, yung other subjects po namin bago po ikaw, may Sunday classes din po sila. Pero in-add na po nila sa Saturday classes para po wala ng Sunday classes. Kumbaga po, di ba, sir, 1 hour and 30 minutes yung classes sa Saturday, tapos klase po sa Sunday. Bale, pinag-add na po nila para 3 hours po. Tapos magkasama na po yung 2 section para madali na daw po. Isang
Can I
discussion.
do that, Ms. Gaspar, without consulting the dean, or I have to clear this with the dean?
Sabi po ng other profs namin po, pumayag daw po si Dean sa kanila kasi nag-consult na daw po ata sila. Pero much better po siguro kung ipaalam niya din po.
I-clear ko muna kay dean, ano?
Opo.
So, pwede yung ipagsama ko yung 2 sections?
Opo, ganun po yung ito pong Saturday classes po namin.
Oh,
Tatlong
that's
subject
how I
po.
handled my class in credit last year. Sabay sila once a week. So, twice a week. But sabay sila so that hindi na sayang talaga yung I mean, I trust you, as students, I trust you to read, but really